The best preparation for tomorrow is doing your better today. Hello and a very good evening to everyone present here. I'm Khushi Patel, PR at Rait Acm. Along with me, I have Akansha Mathpati, Content Chief at Rait Acm. We would like to welcome you all to the Day 4 of Ready to React, a 5-day live workshop organized by Rait Acm, where you will be taken through an amazing journey of JavaScript, the language that gives web pages and interactive elements and makes everything even more attractive. We are glad to have you all here, the learners with us today. Whether you are a beginner or well versed with JavaScript, this workshop will surely benefit each and every one. Even if you haven't got your heart set on a tech career, being proficient in JavaScript language will enable you to build websites from scratch, a pretty useful skill to have in today's world. Throughout the workshop, we will take you through an engaging step-by-step approach to understand the JavaScript code. We will also be providing certificates after the workshop. Participants, please feel free to ask your questions to the mentor. You can also post your queries in the chat text channel. All questions of every participant will be answered during the workshop by our mentor. We will be having a Q&A session at the end.
Now, I would like to introduce you all to the speaker of the day. We have Mr. Rait Acm developer and has completed numerous internships on React. He is currently working as a product engineer intern at Tealfield. Mr. Rait Acm is also the winner of Prequel to Perfection organized by Rait Acm, and he will be briefing us about JavaScript. Before we proceed with this session, let's have a small recap about the topics we have covered yesterday. Difference between the variable and let and constant, functional scope of variable, first class nature of function, what are objects, ways of initializing an object. Okay, over to you, sir.
I'll present my screen. Okay, so I hope my screen is visible to everybody. Then, okay. So we have already seen what are objects, and we have seen we have created a simple object like person with person name, age, and stuff. So what can we have? Like we have an object, we have some properties over an object, and those properties are basically some values that are stored. And also, since we can store like any kind of values, we can also store some functions. So for example, let's create a function. And we don't really need to give a name to this function because this is already interpreted as a property here, and so we can have an anonymous function here, and that's basically going to do like console.log. Okay, so now we have created an object. We have created an object with person name, age, and stuff. So what we learned yesterday was like if I do person name, and in the console I'll see the name printed, and this was expected. Okay, so if I replace the person name by the age, that's fine. Then it will return the age which is passed here. Okay, now since we also have this thing here, which is greet, which is a property, which is actually a function. Okay, so if I say greet, and if I console.log this won't return I am Hari. Instead, it would return us the definition of the function because we haven't called it yet. If we call it, then it's going to print I am Hari, and it prints undefined because we do know that this function is not returning anything. So if I replace this by return 0 or something, then it would be 0. So that is clear to us. Okay. So now we do know that in an object we can pass functions. So what if I have to create a lot of person object, like a lot of objects for different person? How can I do it? So a simple way that I would suggest would be like creating a function, right? There are more better ways such as constructors, but we won't cover it yet. So a simple way would be like function, because what we do, why do we need function? Because we have a bigger program and then we break it down to sub programs. So basically I can create a function which is going to create such person object for me. So I have created a function called as create person. And this is going to obviously take some name, right? So let's say this takes person name and also the age of the person and what it returns. Now we want to create an object. So hence this should also return an object. So this thing written into the curly braces is actually the object, and these are the properties inside that object. So it's similar, like we put the curly braces inside this, we say person name equals person name, and then age equals age. Okay. So now I'll create a person. Okay, so I'll assign, like, take a variable and assign it a name Shubham, and I'll create a person for Shubham. Okay, so this would be the first parameter, which is person name, and also an age. Let's say it's 80. So I've created this person, which is Shubham. So if I console.log Shubham, we'll see, and I'll comment it out, and we'll see that we have a object Shubham with name as Shubham and age as 18. Okay. Now we also want that greet function, right? So let's have the greet function. Before that, there's one more way we can actually make this code look a bit nicer, and also there's a way by which you can uh, define properties which have the same name and same value. Like, not same name and same value. Basically, we have a variable called person name, and what we do here is we say that the name of the property is person name, and the value for this property is something which is stored in person name. So if in such cases you can actually omit this, you can just write person name, and JavaScript will uh, automatically interpret that this is person name colon person name. And same, this can be also done with age, and if now we see the console, it still returns the same result. So that's a bit better. Now I define this function, which is greet. Okay, so this is greet. This takes a function. Okay, this takes a function. Now what I do, I come here and I console.log, I say I am, and put a space. Okay, put a space and add a string. So basically we can add string, right? So when we add string, we basically append the other string, the start of the other string to the end of the previous string. So I can, like, write any string value here. So, but I want this to display I am Shubham. So basically we would pass in person name. Okay, so now if I go to console.log Shubham, and here I'll say greet, which is float. Okay, I'll say greet, and we come here, it says I'm Shubham, and this undefined, we do know why this is undefined. Okay, so it says it's I'm Shubham. Okay, so now what would happen if I say Shubham dot person name? We can do this, like we learned about dot operators. Also there's another way, which is using the bracket notations, also be done, but we'll stick to the dot operator. So dot person name is not Shubham. What if I do this? Then if we check this greet thing, we have changed, let's say this function, this thing is done at line number 364, this is done at 362. So if we check the console, it still says I'm Shubham, but maybe, like, okay, if we bring it down after the assignment operator, maybe this would return right, but it still returns I'm Shubham. Now why this still returns I'm Shubham? I'll save and run it again. So it still returns I'm Shubham. Why does this still return I'm Shubham? Because this greet function, which is this greet function, is referring to person name, and this is basically the variable which we passed in here, which was Shubham. So this is still referring to this variable. But what we instead want is that this should refer, like this person name should refer this variable, right? So that whenever it is changed in the future, we always have this printed in the console. Okay, so how do we solve this? Okay, so maybe we create another function. Okay, maybe we create another function, and that would be function print, let's say function print name. Okay, and this takes the person object, a person object, and it basically console.logs console.log that I am space plus person dot person. Okay. So we created a function which is print name in console.log I am person dot person name, and now I want to call this function. So we have this shubham dot greet, and let's call this as the inner function because this is like defined in the object. So in the object, and this is print name, or let's say it's not print name, let's say it's something called another greet. Okay, and then if you want to call this function console.log, okay, I don't need this console.log because there's one inside already. Okay, so another greet, which is another greet dot log, another greet dot log. Sorry. I basically call this function another greet, and I pass in shubham. So this is basically this object that we created. Okay, so I pass this here, which is another greet shubham, and let's see what this gives me. It gives me I'm not shubham, and if I like do this at line number 361, both of them say that I'm shubham. Okay. Also, one more thing which I just noticed is that we actually don't need this console.log because we already have one inside, so we can get rid of that undefined. Okay, so now this is line number 369. Just try to remember this. This is line number 369, which is basically the inner function. Okay, so or else, okay, this is basically the inner function, line number 369, and we have this another greet function, which is line number 362. So at this stage, the line number 367 as well as the line number 350. Now it shows 355 because the definition of this function is actually at this line. That's why. So maybe we can make it like more informative. I am this person name, and also we'll add and say this is inside the object. Okay. And in case of another greet, I'll say person name plus this is not inside, so that we don't confuse ourselves. So now I'm Shubham and this is not inside. So basically this is the another greet function. And then I'm Shubham, this is inside the object. Okay, that works fine. Now I'll take this function call after line number 363, where I say Shubham.person name becomes not Shubham. So now if you see the console, it says I'm not Shubham, this is not inside, and I'm Shubham, this is inside the object. So in any case, what this greet function, or basically the function which is inside, does is it always prints Shubham, or basically it always prints what was passed initially. But what was passed initially, because it's always referring to this variable. But we don't want this to happen. So what we did, we created another function. But this is a bit stupid again, because you already have an object here. You like have this function which does the greeting for you, but it's not able to do what you wish. Then you create another function. So it sounds a bit stupid, and yes, it is. So the right solution to this is like we basically want this person name to refer to this person, not this one. So basically we always want that there should be a reference allotted to this object every time. So whenever I mean person name, I basically mean that the person name inside this object. So for that, I'll use a keyword called this. Okay. So now if I run the greet function, let's say I run the greet function shubham dot greet here and shubham dot greet here and go to the console, it on its own does everything right because it kind of knows that this thing is changed. So what is this keyword? Like what is this? So we can have a closer look to it. What I'll do, I'll basically console.log this at this moment so that we can see what actually this is. And check the console, it say this variable is nothing but the object itself. Okay, so that was weird. Then let's do a console.log this here. Let's do a console.log this. I'll remove this one of the call. So we have a console.log this at line number 367 after shubham.greet, and same, we'll save it. So this greet basically refers to the object, which is this object which we created for the person name. Okay, and this always refers to this object which is created here, and this refers to the window object. So what is the window object? We already learned about it. The window object is actually this complete screen which has a lot of events and stuff. Okay, so what this is, so this basically refers to or it returns an instance. It returns the instance in which it is existing. So in this case, it basically returns a reference to this instance of object, this instance of the object, which was this object created here. And in this case, it was basically the window object, which was created when this program started executing. So I hope you know what is this. So this is how we basically solve this problem. There are more, like there is the perfect way to do this is using constructors, but we are not covering it now. So let's move on to the next topic. So the next topic is basically about arrays. So what are arrays? You would have learned about arrays in many other languages. Okay, so what are actually arrays? So arrays are basically a list of data. Yeah, a set of data or a list of data. And in JavaScript, they may not be of the same type. So how do we declare an array? So I just declared an array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is it. We have created an array which consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these 5 numbers. But we want to do stuff with this array, so hence we assign it to some variable and we call it let array is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now the basic thing that we would wish to do would be to traverse this whole array and print each and every element of this array. So how we can do this? So way is to basically have console.log array of 0. So what array of 0 is? It's basically pointing to the first element. And similarly, we can have array of 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. There are 5 elements. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the indexes. And if we go to the console, these are basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which we expected. But what if this array is something which is very much big, like 1,000 elements or something? And also you would notice that this is something which is repeating again and again. And if it's repeating and again, then we can for sure use loops here. So we have learned about for loop in the first session. So how do you declare a for loop? Basically create a var or let anything of your preference. There are some pros and cons to var and let, which we have covered. And so let's use let for now, because we do know that let is more stricter than var. Hence, if we should use let most of the time, and if we are certain that this particular variable won't be changed in future, then we can also use const. Okay, so uh, for now I'm using let, and I say let I equals to 0. Okay, and I say I is less than. Now I already know the length of this array, so I say I is less than 5, I plus plus, I plus plus. And here I say console dot log the array, and instead of passing hard-coded numbers, I basically pass I, so that in every loop this I would get incremented by 1. It would go from 0 to 4 and would print all the elements first. That's what it does. This can also be achieved with a while loop or something similar. But now again, this one, JavaScript is dynamic and it offers a lot of dynamic nature in your code. So let's say I have this array. So an array has a method called push, by using which you can push one more element into that array. And let's say we push 6. Okay, so if I push 6, so now this array has actually become 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, but this code won't work for this, right? It would only print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is not printing 6. So basically we want something which we want a code which is more dynamic. So one basic way would be to, like, one not basic but one obvious way is, what if we know the length of the array, then we can sort it out already. So yes, we can get the length of array by simply saying array.length, because arrays are also a type of object, right? So we can also check that if we do console.log type of array, which is basically this array here, you'll see that this prints object. Okay, so, and this object has few properties, and length is one of them, even push is one of them. And we know that an object can also have a member function. Here in this case it was greet, here it is push, and we also have a lot of other methods too. So we do console.log array of I, and now this would travel from 0 to less than the array.length. So no matter how big this array will become, it is going to traverse. So what if I like push more elements, like 6, 6, 6 again and again? So even that would be printed, but you'll see in the console that 6 is printed 4 times here. So it doesn't repeat, but it says that it is printed 4 times. If you want, like, if you want to see distinct distinct lines, then you should replace the numbers, and you'll say that this it's printing 1 to 9, which is basically the complete array that we would expect. So now we learned about looping through arrays, and this can also be this same code can also be done. This can also be achieved using while loops. So in while loops, we first initialize it with something, and then we have a while condition which would run until it is true. So it's I less than array dot length, and inside this we can console dot log our array of I, and also increment I, and make sure you don't forget this statement, or else it infinitely. So out, it's yes, it's 1 to 5, because it's 1 to 5 here too. Okay, so now for time being we will stick to for loop. So okay, now I'm able to traverse through the whole array, but these are numbers, so I also want to calculate some of these numbers. So we can have this exact loop here. Okay, we can have this exact loop here. I'll comment this out. Now I basically want to add it again and again. So I basically want to add it again and again. So let's say I first declare a variable called a sum, and I initialize it to 0. Okay, so basically, since no numbers are added, it's 0. And after every repetition, like in every repetition, what I want to do is I want to say sum is sum plus array of I. Okay, so like after every repetition, it would sum would get updated, and then again in the next repetition, the another element would be added, and at the end we'll get the sum after the completion of this. After the completion of this for loop, and if I print sum here, so and check the console, it returns 15, which is basically the sum of all these numbers. Okay, now what if we want to calculate the product? It's easy, right? We can just replace this by multiplication, and also one more thing, let's also replace this the name product, and instead of 0 we want 1, because if it's 0 then it would multiply it by 0 again and again, and at the end we won't get our expected answer. Product is equal to product into array file, and if we check the answer, okay, we didn't console the answer, so if I console the product, you'll see that it's 120, which is basically the factorial of 5. Okay, now there's one thing which is bothering me again and again. I know that I have to add product or multiply product to itself, but why do I have to do this? Like product is equal to product into product. So there's one more way which you can do, and you can basically specify that operation. For example, if you want to multiply, you can simply say multiplication equals array file. So this is equivalent to the previous statement that we wrote, and it's going to give you the same result. So what if we want to apply this for the sum example? We'll just go back to the sum example, and here where we have sum equals sum plus array 5, we'll just say that sum plus equals array 5, and it would give us the same result, which is 50. Okay, so we have like calculated the sum of the numbers, calculated the product for them. That's good. So we basically know how to traverse an array. Okay, now there's another thing, like as I already said, that an array can have any type of element. Okay, uh, it can store any type of value. So we can have array of arrays, which is array of arrays. So let array 2 is equal to this array. The first element is array, which we arr, which we defined here, and the next element can be like another array. Let's say this, like I or yes, something, and we can also console this. So if we console it, you'll see that it says that it's an array of length 2, and it has two arrays. At the zero index, the array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At the index 1, it's having high and yes. Okay, so now I can comment it out. So we can have like array of arrays. After that, we can also have array of objects, right? So array of objects. For example, we come here and we have this create person function, which is which we can use here. So I'll just uncomment it out so that we can use it here. So I'll come here and the array of 3, and I'll say create a person with some name John, and then also we can like create similar, using similar syntax. I can create more people, John or Ash. Okay, and if we we didn't console it, so okay, we can console log array of 3, and we can see that we have an array of objects, and here we have John, and here we have like Ash or something whatever. So we can have like array of objects, and also every object here can have like a function or anything you want to have. So you can just imagine what level of dynamic uh, things, what level of dynamic things we can do with JavaScript, like how dynamic it is, because it allows you to store a data structure inside a data structure. So yeah. So for example, if we want to like check one thing, let's say we have this traversing loop. Yeah, this one. We have this traversing loop, and I want to run this traversing loop here. And instead of console.log array of I, and I want to run this loop for array 3. So I replace this with array 3.length. And what I want to have is like we can have array of 3, sorry, array 3 of I, which is an object. Like for every iteration, it would be an object. And we can say, let's greet. Okay. So if I save it and if we check that, then this is going to like, I am John, this is inside the object. This is because we have these things written inside. We can maybe do this. Okay. And now if we check it out, it's I'm John, I'm Ash. So we can do such stuff too. So these were like array inside objects. So these were like more or less some stuff about array and how it is useful. Now we'll also see some more cool stuff with array, like some predefined functions in JavaScript which give you a lot of power. So the next concept is higher order functions. So what is a higher order function? So higher order function is something like, let's say we have a function which takes a parameter which is also a function, and it provides some more functionality to the parsed function. So if you want to look at example, let's say we create a function which says generate. By the way, if you have any doubt or something, then you can, at the end we will have a doubt session there. You can ask this. Can you repeat this in short? Okay. Maybe I'll repeat it at the end. So I'll take the recap of this complete session only. Other than that, if you have any doubt, you can ask me. Okay, so function generate random. So let's say we have this function to generate random, and this is not going to take anything. It is just going to return us a random number. Okay, so I'll just write the code and then I'll explain you what is happening here. Okay, so okay, so there's a lot math thing. So whenever we want to check for the execution of nested functions, like a function inside a function, start with the innermost function. So here we have the innermost function, which is math.random. What math.random does is, like, if I write it here, math.random is going to generate math.random is going to generate random numbers from -1 to 1. So like it will be like 0 point something. They are not completely random. They are like pseudo random numbers. If you are interested in such topics, you can actually Google it up. It's a very vast space to learn. So it generates a pseudo random number between -1 to 1. Now what we do, we take that number, we multiply it by 100. So in best case, like this would give us numbers from, like, after execution of this statement, math.random into 100, it would give us number from -100 to +100, like any number from -100 to +100. If it returns 1, then it would be 100. If -1 -100 0, then 0, or else 0.5432 something, then that would be like something which is between 0 and 100. But we don't want those points, so we do math.ceil. Now what will math.ceil do? I'll also write it here, comment it out here. Okay, so what will math.ceil do? For example, if you have a number which is 0.45678 something, okay, this much big number. So math.ceil is going to just convert this into 0. So if you want to imagine, you can get it. Sorry. This is math.ceil. It will convert it into 1. So ceil, you can assume it as a ceiling. Okay, ceiling. So the upper bound. So for this number, which is between 0 to 1, the upper bound is considered, which is 1. And if you there's one more function called as math.floor. So ceil goes for the ceiling, floor goes for the floor. So floor would convert this number to 0. So we are for now, let's keep it ceil, and it would like if we have the 0.456 something, it would convert that to 1. And what would this do? Math.absolute. So math.absolute converts a negative number into a positive number, and if it's already positive, then not a problem. So why do we do this? Because there is a chance that we can get a number between -1 to 0. But let's say we don't want negative numbers. So that's why we convert them to positive numbers. So this is a function generate random. So I'll just console.log generate random, and I'll call it. Okay. Yeah, I'll call it. And if you see the console, there's a number 54. If I refresh it, it's 91, it's 79. So we get random numbers. Cool. We get random numbers. We get some random numbers. Now what we want to do, what I want to achieve is, I want a random number, but the random number should be a multiple of 3. Like for sure, it should be a multiple of 3. I don't like pose a limit. It can be any number greater than 100, less than 100. I don't care. Whatever it is, but I want it to be a multiple of 3 for sure. So one simple, like you can do stuff in this program, sorry, in this function itself. But since we want to learn about higher order function, we'll just have an example for that. Okay, so higher order functions. So higher order functions are basically functions which are going to take parameter, which are going to take another function as a parameter. So we'll have a function which is generate random into 3. Let's call it just generate random into 3. It's going to take function. Okay, cool. And it's going to return this function. So I assume that this function is going to return me a number. I don't know whether it's a multiple of 3 or not, but let's assume that it's going to return me a number. And what I simply do is I multiply it by 3. So I call this function, I multiply it by 3 so that everything works fine. Now, whenever I call this get random into 3 function, let's say console.log get random into 3 function, there's a requirement that I should pass another function inside it, because this is an higher order function, which basically like provides more functionality to a already existing function. So let's say generate random. We'll pass generate random to this. Okay, and I'm not like having parentheses here, because if I put parentheses here, then it would call the function right away, but we don't want it to call it now. We want it to call it when we have this return state. Okay, we'll save it. I'll go here. We have this through 237, and if you add it, this is 12, basically a number which is divisible by 3. Okay, now again a number divisible by 3. So every time I'll get a number which is divisible by 3. So this was like an example of higher order functions. So what are higher order functions? Higher order functions are some functions which are going to take parameter as another functions and then provide some more functionality over that function. So in our case, we had a function which is going to generate some random numbers, and then we have another function which is going to generate some random numbers. But that is we want that those random numbers should be a multiple of 3. So if you have any doubts, you can just post it into the chat. Now we have learned about like what are higher order functions. So there are some higher order functions already available in JavaScript for arrays, and they are super useful. So for example, if you are going to do React or whatever, Node.js or anything in future, then these would be something which are going to help you a lot. So if you might remember, we were using this syntax to like go through all the elements of the array. But there's one more thing that we have in arrays, that is array. Let's bring that array here. Where is that array? Yeah. So this array, I'll comment it out, or else this will give us an error. And I'll bring this array here so that it's visible. Okay. So we have this let array here, an array dot for each. This is a function which is on this, which is on the array object, or basically the prototype of the array object. And let's not go deeper into it now. So this is a higher order function. I've already said that this is a higher order function. Okay. So we already know that this is going to take a function here. We know that at this place where we have this dash, it's going to take a function. So we should create that function, right? So let's create a function. Let's create a function. And that would be print me. Simple function, print me. It takes a parameter, which is, let's say, element. Okay. And it basically console.log this element, nothing else. It's just going to do console.log of element that it just received. So if I run this here, like print me as 4, what you would expect, like let's have a guess in the chat so that I can see whether you are active or not. What would print me return me? Okay. Are there any answers for this? Print me return. What will print me return? Are there any guesses? You can guess if you want. You shouldn't guess because you should know. Then I'm doing print me a 4. Okay, I'm doing print me a 4, which is this function defined here. And okay, I get 4. I don't know why this 3 appears. Okay, 4. I see few 4 as answers. Okay, cool. So if we save this, there's an error. Okay, cannot access error before initialization. So maybe we actually by mistake accessed it here. Yeah. And do you know why we can't access array before initialization? Anybody? It's a 3-letter word. Or if you can guess why this error comes here. Cannot access array before initialization. Can anybody guess why this happens? Why this happens and what is that called? Like, where is array currently at line number 386? Can you guess? Okay, let. Okay, I understand let. Okay, but why? I explained you a term for that. Like in case of let, what happens is before initialization, the variable is in dash DTZ. Okay, it's TDZ, TDZ, temporal dead zone. Yeah, so it's in TDZ, which is temporal dead zone, and that's why we can't access. So what if it was a var? What if it was a var? Would I be able to access it or not? Yes or no? If it was a var, whether I would be able to access it or not? Yes. Okay. Yes. I see. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. You're right. So if we have it var, and I'll just do control.c. We have that array there, and we have this as var, which is this. That there's no error now because we know the answer to this. Okay. So, but since we are using let and we want to stick to let, let's remove this. Okay. Let's remove this completely. Now we know that this print me is going to return us 4, which it did. And if I come up here, which is array.forEach, what I will do is I'll pass this print me inside this array.forEach. And what array.forEach will do for us It's basically a higher order function, and it takes another function inside. Okay. So this for each would call this element inside, which is print me. Call this element inside. Call this function which is passed inside, and it will pass you all the elements of the array one at a time. So for example, if it's in the first iteration, it would pass you print me of 1, and after this, in the second iteration, it would be print me of 2. At the third iteration, it would be print me of 3. So we have this like array.forEach. There's a print me, and what will this return? Like now we already know this because for each is going to execute print me and pass the element of the array one at a time. So this would print like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for all the elements, and it does print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so what we had previously was a for loop written this way, and what you have now is this, which is single line. You might argue we do have this yet, but now we can use an anonymous function. Like if I say I have this function called print me, but what's the use of this print me? Like there's no specific use, right? So what I can do, instead of having this print me here, I can have an anonymous function here. So I'll just remove this print me and just cut this function, place it here, and we have this array.forEach, a function. We pass in an element, console.log element. Now, do you think this is going to work? Do you think this is going to work? Yes or no? Do you think this is going to work? Yes or no? You can guess, like it's completely something to guess. Do you think this is going to give an error, or this is going to work or not? Do you think this is going to work? Are there any guesses? Yes. Okay. So few people say that this is going to work. By few people, I mean one people. Anybody else? It's either yes or no. So okay, few people, two people. Error? No. Anybody else? Okay. So, but if you see the console, it actually works. Why this works? Because this is not a wrong code, right? We can have anonymous functions, and we have learned about anonymous functions already. And anonymous functions are something which are very much similar to the other function, but they just don't have a name. Like we have anonymous function, which is not having a name, but it does have the definition and all the stuff. Okay. Now, I guess like I could also cover this here. So what if I have this function inside here? Let's see. What if I have this function inside here, and then basically this is the definition of this function in a single statement, and then I call it. Okay, I'll just remove this element, and instead of element, I'll say hi. Once I say hi, will this return hi or will this return me an error? You can guess your answers, but like we'll just check it out. So it's simply going to return hi. Why this returns hi? Because this is an anonymous function, and you defined it and basically invoked it at the same line. Because other than that, there's no specific use of anonymous function. You want something to be like invoked right away. That's why you are using an anonymous function. If you want this to be like invoked some other time, then you obviously need a name so that you can access it there. So we have this array.forEach function element, console.log element, and this works completely fine. We have checked it out. Now, similar to this, we have one more function, which is map. Okay, so very simple, array.map, and this is also going to take one function. So let's write that function. And what that function is going to do is, it's a function, let's say value, okay, and it is also going to take an element. Okay, I missed one thing. I'll also cover it. Well, I'll cover it in map only, because that concept is same for each and map, and more or less for all the higher order functions for arrays. So we have a function called value. We have this element inside. We come here. So what this map does is, this map, like in case of for each, this was just traveling through the array. So this is just if you want to traverse the array, if you want to traverse the array, okay, like if you want to traverse the array and maybe do some processing, maybe do some, like I want to print the elements, I want to find the index of 3, I want to find the index of 5 or whatever, or maybe if it is an array of objects, which is like array of different person, you want to find a person with this name, or you want to find people with this age or whatever, right? So in case of map, what map does is it's going to traverse to, like it's going to traverse through the whole array, but at every point it is going to return an element. It's going to return an element, and then all those elements sum up to become a new array. So what I meant to say is, after array.map is, after I run array.map, this would certainly return me another array, another. This is going to return me another array. Okay. So, and what would that be depends on this function. So let's say I want to traverse to the complete array and I want to create a new array. And what that array is, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say we want to return, like we want to create an array which is table of 5. Okay. So basically 5 into the element. Okay. So 5 into this element. Now since this is going to return an array, I can store it somewhere. So let's say I say this is another array. So this another array is basically the array returned by map. And what is this going to return? That depends on this, which is value. And we have this element passed here in this value, which is going to simply return 5 into element. So this, what this would do is the map function would call value for each element, and each element would be multiplied by 5 and returned, and it would create a new array which would contain a table of 5, because it would be like 5 ones are 5 twos are 5 threes are. Okay, and if you want to see this, we can also console.log. Okay, console.log it, another array, and you can see that this is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So like, isn't it very much useful, because you can generate a new array, like if you want to, let's say, add some property to everybody. Let's say you have like usernames and you want to add @gmail.com to every user, and create a new array after that. So if you want to do that in the same array, you can use for each. If you want to create a new array out of that, then you can basically create a new array out of that. And one more thing is, value can also accept one more thing, which is index. Okay, like for example, let's say if the index is greater than 3, if the index is greater than 3, I want to return this, or else like there's no use of writing else, because if we enter in this function, it's anyway going to return. So return the element itself. So if the index is greater than 3, return 5 into element. If the index is not greater than 3, just return the same element. Don't do anything crazy with it. So if I save it now, you'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, but the last element, which is this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, where the index becomes greater. 4 where the index becomes greater, it's simply multiplied by 5. So this can also be done for like for each. You can also have one more parameter, which is index there. Okay, you can name it anything, like this can be element. If I want, I can call it anything. Let's say keyboard. Like it completely makes no sense, but still we can have any name, because these are the local variables stored here. So even if I run this is going to return the same thing. Okay, but I'll do that. Okay, now again, since we were able to do this in the case of array.forEach, we can also do this in case of array.map. So I'll just remove this value. I remove this value from here, and this becomes an anonymous function, and I basically paste it here. Okay. I'll just do some formatting, and yeah. So we have a function inside a function, which is just like, okay. So this looks beautiful, at least better than that. Okay, because this function is just having one thing to do, which is return 5 into element if the index greater than 3, or else return the same element, right? So why do I have to just create another element, another function with a name or something? I can just define it here only if I want. So if I run this, this is going to run exactly fine, not a problem. So this is how array.map works. Now there's one more thing, which is like there are a few more things we'll cover it. So array.filter. So this function, which is array.filter, like you can guess the name for sure. By the name you can guess that this is going to filter the content of the array based on something. Okay, so based on something, and that something is basically the function that we pass. So now I won't create another function. I'll just create a function in the array.filter function only. So I can do that like this, array function. It also takes element, like whatever you want to name it. And then in this case, what happens is that you have to specify that when to filter or when not to filter. So, or more precisely, what to keep in the array and what not to keep in the array. That's basically something that we want written. And at the end, this would also return a new array, a filtered array. So let's say let filtered array, and this is very much important because this is something you would be using like most of the times. If you are learning React or whatever it is, like you are going to learn, like you are going to use this thing, filter, map, and for each is optional if you want to use for each, or else go with that for. Or we do have two more loops, for off loop and for in loop, those things. Uh, but map and filter is like something which is a bit necessary because they are beautiful first of all, okay, and easier to use. So why not use them instead of doing instead of going the another way. So this is at the end going to return array. This is at the end it will return an array, and that would be like a filtered array. And what this is going to filter, or what we have to keep in the filtered array and what we don't have to keep in the filtered array, that is decided based on this function. So we can basically have like, let's say, have if condition. Okay. Element if element is greater than, let's say, if element is greater than 3. If element is greater than 3, I just want to return that element. So basically I just want to return true. So if an element is greater than 3, I'll return true, which means that I want that element to be in the array. And if it's not, then that is going to return false. I don't have to write else, because again, if this enters this, then it's obviously going to be true, or else it is going to be false. So if we console.log the filtered array, console.log filtered array, you will see that we only get 4 and 5. I'll remove this. We get 4 and 5 only because for 4 and 5 only this statement return true. Okay, so this is a very small code, like only 3 lines to do a lot of stuff. Okay, 3 lines and 1 parenthesis and curly brace. There's one more thing that you can do. Okay, that is, instead of having an if, you can have this and then put up a question mark and basically write what you want to do here in this. So if this is true, then this would run, or else it would return false, like basically this. Now this is giving us errors because of the semicolons. Because this should be like, this is meant to be used inline, and like we can't use it in this way precisely, but we'll see example for ternary operator. That's called a ternary operator. We'll see a short example. So till that time, like, we'll just go back to the if thing. Okay, so we have checked array.filter, and this can also take the index if you want to like do something with the index. Now let's have a look at the ternary operator. Let's say like console.log, and we can put a condition, then have a question mark, or let's say I define, sorry, or I declare a variable, let some value, okay, and I say that if 4 is greater than 5, then give me 4, or else give me 5. Okay, this is a useless example. So let's say we have let a is equal to 8, and let b equals to 9. Okay, so I can have a condition, okay, if a is greater than b, return a, or else return me b. Okay, I hope you understand it. If a is greater than b, return me a, or else return me b. So we will get the biggest element in this sum value. So if we console.log some value here, then we'll get 9. Okay, so this is something like ternary operator is something which is very much useful, if especially if you are going to learn React, because it's something not we, but it's something at least I use a lot of time, and it makes the task like a bit easy. So now we have this let a is equal to 8, 9. So there's this reduce function also. I'll just cover it later because I think this should be covered first. So arrow functions. Now we have reduced the code by like creating anonymous functions, right? We have reduced the code by creating anonymous functions. Can this be improved? Can this be improved more? And yes, it can be, because in 2015, when JavaScript uh, introduced like a ES6 syntax, by which there was they also added another way of creating a function that is simply like, let's say, const or something like something. Okay, I'm not very good at naming variables, but you should be good at naming variables. So you can have a parenthesis. Okay, then you can basically have equals sign and the greater than symbol, and that looks a bit like an arrow. For me, it looks completely like an arrow because I'm using that. I'm using a theme and the font. But for you, it would be like something equals and greater than symbol. And then you have, okay. So if I have like a function, let's say function something this. So these two things are equivalent. Function something this and constant something this. These two things are equivalent. Okay. You might not believe me, but these are equivalent. So I'll just comment it. Okay. So this is const something equals to this and this. Okay. So now let's say I want to do something. So let's do hello world. Okay. Hello world. Okay. And how do I run this function? Very simple. The same way, like call something, and it would basically run hello world. So isn't it like we just added some symbols and stuff, and all of a sudden like the code reduced a lot, and it seems a bit magical. And yeah, it's great. Like I also love the syntax. Maybe you will also love it someday. So it returns hello world. Cool. Now, how can I replace this? So if you have a closer look, you would see that this is very similar to like an anonymous function here. Okay, this is very similar to an anonymous function here. So if, for example, I declare a function like constant function, and if I said that it was a function which will do something which is exactly this, and you'll see that, okay, this is very much similar, right? This is very much similar. So maybe we can use these instead. And also there's one more cool stuff about it. Like if you are going to return something on the same line, you don't even need the curly braces, okay? You don't even need the curly braces. This is going to return you just fine. This is going to return you console.log, that hello world thing, just fine. So basically now, if you have a look, this is something which is very much similar. This looks okay. This looks reasonable. Like there's an anonymous function. This is also a kind of anonymous function, and it's like stored in a variable, or a variable is initialized with it. And also in this case, also a variable is initialized. So can we replace this, like wherever we used anonymous function, with this? And yes, we can do. So let's do that. Like if we can do it, why not? So we'll just come here and we'll remove this function. Very simple. Remove this function. We have this curly braces, and we just add an arrow here. We have this curly braces. We add an arrow here, and that's it. We change the function, and if I console.log this filtered array, it just works fine. Okay. Maybe we can do this with all the functions. So I just have to remove this function keyword, and then we have this parenthesis, and here you can have like all the parameters, and you have an arrow, have a curly brace, and okay, that's done. Like there's an error. Let's see, something is not defined. Okay, maybe like we were calling something and we did this. Cool. So here we have filtered array 4, 5, which is printed well, and we can also print another array. This would also be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and since it was like greater than 4, it became 25. Like based on this, since the index was greater than, since the index was greater than 3, it returned as 25. Now this can be also done to this. Okay, cool. So just remove the function. Okay, and just have an arrow here, and that works fine. That works fine. So if I go to this console, okay, I'll save the script, go to the console, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there's only one line, right? So this can be improved a bit more. This is it. I'll just remove that semicolon because now it's not needed. So in a single line, you did this. Now let's bring that code. Let's bring that code which we wrote earlier. Yeah, here you go. So let's bring that code here. Look at this code and look at this code. Okay. Don't you feel this is way more superior than this once you understand it? So like obviously, and this is going to give you the exact same result. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Both of these are going to give you the exact same results. And like that was the power of arrow functions. There are more conceptual differences between arrow functions and normal functions, but maybe we might cover it like later. We already have like very much less time. Maybe we can end this session. So if you have any problem or if you have any doubts, you can ask, and maybe I'll try to reply all of them. Okay, cool. If you have any doubt till now, like from the start to this end, anything, you can ask your questions, ask your doubts here. If you didn't understood anything, I'm ready to repeat it in a brief manner. So please reply. So, any questions? I'll just have a look at the chat. No questions. Can you explain for each again? Yeah, cool. So let's just go to for each again. Okay, let's go to for each again. Just a minute, just a minute, just a minute, just a minute. So I guess like if everybody is clear with this, then they all can leave, and whoever are having doubt, we can just continue this session. Uh, like just solving those doubts. That would be like beneficial. Okay, so you can maybe someone from the ACL staff can do this closing ceremony.
Okay, so I think like participants have any doubts, like they can just confirm so that we can move. Okay. Well, if you believe in yourself and have dedication and pride and never quit, you'll be a winner. The price of victory is high, but so are the rewards. On this note, we would like to conclude today's session by expressing our heartfelt gratitude towards our expert for honoring us with his time and presence. Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us with all the valuable knowledge and information. I would like to express my gratitude to the principal of RAIT, Dr. Mukesh Patil, sir, and HOD of IT Department, Dr. Ashish Jadhav, sir. Our heartfelt thanks to all the participants for tuning in and keeping the session interactive. We hope you enjoyed today's session. Do follow us on Instagram to get updates and regarding these and many more workshops also. Attempt the daily quiz that we upload on our Instagram stories. Do not forget to attempt the quiz before leaving. We have put the link to it in the text channel. For further updates, follow us on our social media handles. Link to the same has been put in the text channel too. Let us all meet tomorrow for day 5 of the Ready to React. Till then, keep learning, keep coding. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Hello everyone, please wait a minute. So we have an announcement. So as we have announced yesterday, we will organize a workshop on React. So the poster for the workshop is out. So I would like to tell about the speaker of the workshop. So the speaker is Mr. Rizwan Khan. He is currently working in Paytm as a software developer. Also, he has a huge teaching experience. He is the instructor on YouTube for over the past 4 years. So we have added the link for the workshop in the chat channel as well as in the chat box as well as in our Discord. So do register for it. Thank you. Those who have doubt, please wait here. Others can leave.
Excuse me, I'm currently unable to see the chat window. I do not have access to the quiz link.
Yeah, we'll send it in the Discord channel.